Hey, welcome everybody. We're going to get started here. I'm sure we'll have a few people joining us as we come in here. Um, my name is Michael Ratajczyk. I am the program director for St. Mary's Center for Business Analytics, as well as our business intelligence programs at the bachelor level, graduate level, certificate level as well. So thank you so much for joining us here. You are uh, being a part of what we call our Big Data University speaking series. St. Mary's has held these before. We took a little bit of a break, a hiatus, and we're bringing these back. So there will be two more planned for this fall, and then we'll have some for the spring as well. Those of you familiar with our Business Intelligence Summit each year, where we have over 200 people attend, um, this is on top of that. So it's not, we're not replacing the BI Summit where we have 10 different speakers and a whole afternoon kind of event and a career panel. This is in addition to those things. And this is brought to you through the Center for Business Analytics, a new initiative at St. Mary's University, supported by a National Science Foundation grant that St. Mary's won last year, as well as donations from individuals and businesses and organizations who want to see, return to a value-added experience for students, like you're seeing here as well. I want to let you know that this is recorded. There might have been a little banner at the top when you logged in that suggested it was recorded. I just want to confirm that to you that this is being recorded. And we will be sharing this out on a website or on a Google Drive of some sort at a later date, in case you want to review it, or for those that were unable to attend today. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Professor Dean Beckman, Chair of the Business and Communication Department, for his presentation. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. As Michael said, I'm Dean Beckman, Chair of the Business and Communication Department at St. Mary's University of Minnesota. I'm at the undergraduate college on the Winona campus, and I'm thrilled that you're joining us here today. So thank you very much for participating in this session called You've Done the Work, Now Showcase It, Establishing an Online Portfolio for Your Projects. I'm somewhat of, I think, an unusual speaker for a big data speaker series, just in as much that I teach on the communication side of our business and communication department. I'm primarily responsible for our public relations and digital media major students. And sometimes students major in communications because they want to avoid the data side of things. However, as we know, all professions are sort of going that route now. And as someone who has required their students to have an online portfolio since 2004, that's when I started to do some research and work into online portfolios. And within the last 10 years, we've started up a 1-credit class that's required for our public relations and digital media majors called a Senior Portfolio Development. So we require it on the communication side of the department. I'm a firm believer that every student in every major should have some type of online portfolio that's relevant to them, to their best work, and to the field that they want to go into. So I was thrilled when Professor Ratajczyk contacted me and asked me to do a session on portfolios, because it is something I feel very passionately about and think that it can benefit students of all majors. As we go along here today, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll sort of get to the questions as we go along. We'll try to make this as interactive as possible. We have Riley here today, who's going to help me kind of keep track of questions in the chat as I do the presentation. This is also going to be somewhat interactive. Fairly early on in the presentation, I'm going to be putting up a poll that I would like you to respond to. You'll be able to use either your computer or your phone to respond to that poll. But again, feel free to ask questions as we go through. Just to give you a little bit of an outline of what we'll be talking about here, we'll sort of talk about what an online portfolio is. We'll chat about the purposes, some different purposes of online portfolios. And then we'll start getting into best practices, tips, and tricks on how to make your portfolio the best that it can be. And then towards the end of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about portfolios for data science, data analytics students. So that's kind of an overview of where we're headed today. So I'll start off by talking about the purposes of an electronic portfolio. And to me, the primary purpose is to help you stand out from a very crowded job applicant field. It's really the reason I started requiring my public relations students to have an online portfolio. I saw all of the great work that they were doing in the classroom and through internships and volunteer experiences, but I didn't feel like their resumes really matched all of the great work that they were doing, or really showcase the best that they could showcase the great work that they were doing, especially to hiring managers and in their job applications. So you need something to differentiate yourselves from all of the other students who are graduating either at the undergraduate or graduate level. We know that the job market is not as good today as it was even a year ago or 2 years ago. Post-pandemic, a lot of times it could be relatively easy to get a job, but that is definitely no longer the case. Recent statistics shows that about 400,000 undergraduate and nearly 206,000 master's degrees are conferred just in business each year. And then if we expand that out a little bit, data science, data analytics market graduates grew by over 700% in the last 5 years. So there's just an explosion of student demand, which can then sometimes oversaturate the market a little bit. And even though hiring is still good, is still strong, there are sometimes hundreds of applications for any one job opening out there. So what is going to make you stand out and help your application get pushed up? One thing I always tell students is that an electronic portfolio will not get you the job. Only you and your skills can get you the job. But what an electronic portfolio can do is it can help you get noticed. A very recent example of that is I'm on a hiring committee here at St. Mary's, and we recently received about 30 applications for an opening. Only one of those students, and this was for a social media manager position. So one of those types of positions where you would expect students need to kind of, or applicants need to showcase their work. Out of the 30 applicants that we had, only one had an online portfolio. And yes, I noticed that in their cover letter and resume, and then I visited that, and it helped my perception of that particular candidate. So while it won't get that candidate the job, it did in this particular case, and I know lots of other cases, it does help you get noticed and it helps you stand out from the crowd a little bit and all of those other of hundreds of applicants that a lot of job postings receive. Okay. Recent headline in the Wall Street Journal, again, alludes to an increasingly difficult job market. So the headline is longer job odds for young grads. And then a couple of things that really stood out to me in the article. One of the quotes said, hiring for roles that usually require a bachelor's degree has dropped below 2019 rates in recent months. The drop has been steeper for 20-somethings due to more established professionals staying in jobs longer. So while wages have risen, that means people are staying longer, right? And so that creates fewer job openings for younger professionals. And so the need to stand out from the field, to stand out from the crowd, is only increasing. One other highlight from that particular article, it talks about one systems engineer. He sent out 460 applications before landing a job. So hopefully you don't experience anything like that. But again, it does go to show you need differentiation when you're out looking for jobs. And so really that's kind of the primary purpose of not only this session to help you differentiate yourself from all of the other data analytics and data science professionals and job applicants out there, but also the primary purpose of an online portfolio. A portfolio is a repository of your work. And when I talk to students about creating one for job application purposes, I primarily talk about it's a repository for the best work that you've done. And not just your work, but really you can put anything up there that a hiring manager might want to see. And so that kind of segues into the next purpose of an online portfolio, and that is it's a one-stop shop. It provides corporate hiring managers evidence of learning, skills, experience, and professionalism all in one place. I also encourage students to put your social media links on there because we know hiring managers will try to find out as much about you as possible. So we're basically taking everything a hiring manager might want and we're wrapping it up in a nice package and we're handing it to them in the form of an online portfolio and basically saying, I'm an open book, take a look. This is what I can do for your company. So it's really a convenient way for hiring managers to access your information. And it's nice for you as well because you have control over it. And then you can just send one link to a hiring manager rather than uploading documents and all of that. So I have some examples here of different portfolios that my students have done. So one thing I want you to keep in mind as we look at some of these examples is that these are going to be a little bit more on the creative side of things because these are public relations majors who are going out and they're trying to get communication specialist jobs of some kind. Sometimes that involves graphic design, sometimes that involves multimedia. And so I encourage them to have a wide variety of those types of communication aspects on their portfolios. So I recognize their portfolios will have different content than what your portfolios might have, but I think it does give you an example of what we're talking about when we mention online portfolios. So I'll click on Morgan von Felt's portfolio here. So I have it linked and I have Morgan and all of the other portfolios. I have their permission to take a look at them during this session here today. Riley, we can see Morgan's portfolio okay, right? No, you don't see
Yes.
it?
No, I only see one-stop shop.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me go to, I'll need to do a reshare then. Okay. Okay. So now we should be able to see that.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I have Morgan von Felt's online portfolio here. And so you can see it's essentially a website. Most of our public relations students at St. Mary's utilize Wix. I believe Morgan created this in Wix, but then purchased her own URL. So she has morganvonfelt.com. Some of the other ones that we'll look at, they didn't purchase their own URL. And so then you'll see it's sort of a Wix website with their name at the back end of it. And again, Wix is just one of many website building options. I don't necessarily require students to use Wix. That has tended to be the most user-friendly and what our students have gravitated to. But if you know coding well and want to create your own website, you can certainly do that as well, or utilize all of the other companies that are out there that provide websites. So it's an online website, and what Morgan has done with this is she's showcasing a variety of some of her best work. Now, I ask students to create a portfolio that showcases variety because I'm not asking them necessarily to send this to a specific employer. What's nice though about an online portfolio is you can configure it in any way. So if you do want to customize it for a specific job that you're applying to, you can certainly do that. I always tell students a portfolio is dynamic. It's never static. It should always be changing, always be adapting and growing as you grow in your skills and your profession. And sometimes students will change their portfolio to highlight specific work that they might want a specific employer to see. So this is sort of Morgan's general portfolio. So you can see she has an About Me section. And if you click on that, it just goes and tells you a little bit more about who she is and what her interests are, her skills, her background, and all of that. A famous mass media researcher by the name of Marshall McLuhan said, "The medium is the message." So I always tell students, lean into the fact that this is a website. It should be a very visual, interactive medium. So we talk a lot about photos and the aesthetics of their site. We talk about providing links that people can click on. You want to utilize the online nature of these portfolios and use that to help you as much as possible. So that's her first thing on the portfolio. So if an employer wanted to say, okay, who is this Morgan Von Felt, then they're able to go to this About Me section. And then the rest of the menu options up here on the top menu all showcase some of the work that she's able to do. So as a communications person, she wanted to showcase design work, photography work, and her public relations work. And so when you click on each of the tabs, that's the kind of work that is showcased in there. So I'll click on the design tab here. She has an excellent explanation of the type of work that the hiring manager who's looking at this will find in the portfolio. An important thing to remember as you create portfolios is that you're creating this for somebody who doesn't already know you and has not been exposed to your work. So you have to provide good explanations and strong context for the work that you're showing. We'll talk about that a little bit more later when we get into the best tips and sort of best practices with portfolios. So you can see this is where she's showcasing graphic design work, and there's an explanation of the projects that she's displaying in here. Okay. So that's the graphic design tab. If we go to the public relations tab over here, that's more of her written work. And so she links to news stories, position paper, a newsletter that she created, news releases that she created. And if you click on these, each one of them will take you to the actual work that was created. Social media graphics down here and all of that. And then one other thing with Morgan's that I wanted to point out is if you click on the photography tab, this actually takes you to a different website that Morgan has. She has a side photography business. And so this takes you to her mypixieset.com website, where she showcases some of her different photography skills. So that is one example. I think I used Morgan's first, and I'll stop the share there and go back to the PowerPoint. I used Morgan's first because I think it highlights good variety in a portfolio, and it also showcases some of the other things that we're going to be talking about as we talk about best practices, tips, and all of that. I'm going to stop there just momentarily. Riley, any questions so far in the chat?
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay, all right. Again, if you do have any, just put them in the chat, and then Riley will keep us updated on that. So the one-stop shop, it's a place a hiring manager can go to access pretty much anything they want to about you. The next, I think, purpose of a portfolio is to provide a more personalized, strong first impression of you. I always make sure I mention to students that a portfolio can help you get an interview, and it can help you not get an interview if it isn't well done. Because for a hiring manager that doesn't already know you, it will be their first impression of you. And we all know the importance of first impressions. So the homepage is going to be potentially someone's first impression of you. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to Caroline's portfolio. So I'll have to do a reshare here and on that and show you Caroline's. Okay. So Caroline, and I always talk to students about if you're comfortable having a photo of yourself, then do so, but make sure it's a professional photo. So we can see Caroline has that here. If someone isn't comfortable with a photo, that isn't absolutely necessary. With a website, it is a more visual medium, so I encourage it, but I also tell students if they are concerned they might be discriminated against for any purpose, or if they're just not comfortable having their photo on there, then to leave that off. Most students opt to have one on, but I do tell them it should be a professional photo and not something that you cropped off of Facebook or took haphazardly just to get a photo on there. This is going to be someone's first impression. Within the first 5 to 15 seconds, we are developing an instantaneous impression of Caroline's professionalism. And it will tell a hiring manager whether or not they want to click on any of these tabs, right? And so that home page is of the utmost importance. So if you decide after this session to put together your own portfolio, I encourage you to spend a lot of good quality time making that homepage very visually appealing so that it encourages the hiring manager to work through the rest of it. And so we can see with Caroline here, she has different menu items. She also has an About Me section. She has experience, and then under experience, she has the 2 internships that she did while she was at St. Mary's. She has work samples. So if you click on work samples, that scrolls you down to writing samples, social media samples, design samples, and professional involvement. You can also see as I scroll down on Caroline's page here, she has links to her Instagram account, her Twitter account, and her LinkedIn account. And if you do click on those do go to her personal pages. So again, she's giving a hiring manager everything they might need to learn more about her. The key when you do that, obviously, is you have to make sure your social media accounts are presentable, are the way you would want the outside world to view and perceive you. And so again, if you click on any of these, it'll just take you to the specific work that she's done. You can click on that work and learn more about her. Online portfolios, and I'll talk more about this in just a minute, a hiring manager isn't going to look at the whole thing. A hiring manager will pick and choose those that are most relevant to the job that they're hiring for. So while she has all of these things on here, we realize the hiring manager won't look at all of it. But what Caroline is doing with this more generalized kind of good variety portfolio is she's giving the hiring manager options to say, here are the skills I have. Here's how I can help your company. You go ahead and take a look at whatever you want to look at. And then it's up to the hiring manager to decide how much time they want to spend doing that. But it really is a way for Caroline and Morgan and everybody else who has one to stand out from the people who don't have an online portfolio. And the vast majority of people don't have one. So if you can have one going into a data analytics, data science job, I think that'll definitely make you stand out from the crowd. All right, go back to the PowerPoint here. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'd like to get some feedback from all of you. So I'm going to be putting up a poll momentarily, and you'll be able to respond to the poll either with your phone or the computer. So I'll bring that up. Riley, is the poll showing here? No, I'll have to do a reshare then. Okay. There we go. So the question I'm asking in the poll is, how do you currently showcase your projects? So you select the one that most closely relates to your activity. So there's 2 ways to respond. You can go to this website here, pollev.com/Dean Beckman, my name. So if you do it on your computer, that would be how you would do it. Or if you want to go to your phone, you can join by text. The number you're texting to is 37607. So that'd be the number you're texting to. And then you text my name in there to join. And then after that, you should be able to select one of these options here, either A, B, C, D, E, or F. That's what you would put in. So go ahead and try that. And Michael, I might ask you to try that just to make sure that it's working okay. Okay, looks like we're starting to get some populated responses now.
Isn't it fun to see how in real time that those bars change? It's
Whenever
data.
I do this in a classroom setting, I've got it up on the big screen, and I always say they should have like little rabbits racing across the screen as the different numbers get populated in. So early results are showing that most of you are not necessarily showcasing your projects, and that's fine. Hopefully, at the end of this session, you'll be motivated to do so and kind of understand the importance of doing so. I don't know. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. If the one person who did respond that you submit individual files as requested, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing. How has that gone for you? Has that been a good process for you? Something that generally works out pretty well? And Michael, I might ask you as well to come on here and say, what has your experience been as somebody who mentors graduating seniors and students and some of our School of Graduate and Professional Program students as well? What has sort of been the way you've seen most students share out their work with employers?
Yeah, so with graduate students and undergrads, it does vary. But the one thing that I have seen time and time again is some part of the interview, they're going to give you a data set. If they haven't, or if you haven't supplied one of your previous work, I would say 99 out of 100 times I have heard that the interview comes with a data set. And oftentimes it's not about getting the right answer, it's about them learning how you approach the data. And for example, if you're a student at St. Mary's or alumni in our field, you know that you have some classes where there are errors in the data on purpose, right? And it causes you headaches, right? That's the reality of it, and that's why we prepare you for that. And then there's other avenues where there's some classes where we give you one of three files to work on for your term project, right? Like these are the three files. This is what you get. Go work on them. Do your best. Do what you feel you need to do to accomplish the objectives. And then other times we have those capstone classes, or we have other classes where, hey, if you got a great data set that you want to work on, something passionate you want to work on and work with, go for it, right? Depends on the class, of course, but those are things that we try to do to get you a data set that's robust enough, has a lot of pitfalls and challenges, and requires rigor, tenacity, grit, so that you can leave our classes with a respectable data set that showcases your work. Because that's part of the game. It's part of the game, so.
Oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, based on those poll results, it's obvious that those of you watching, I'm glad you're here, because hopefully you'll be motivated, because most of you are not necessarily showcasing your work in a specific way, and that's perfectly okay. I would say that's more normal than not. And so what we want to do is try to get you to that next level where now you develop a place to showcase your work. So when someone asks to see it, you have an easy link that you can send them, and it's all kind of prepared and ready to go. All right. So the other thing I want to say is, as we talk about the importance of an online portfolio, is employers, and I've specifically asked employers. So a lot of times I'll have some professionals help review student portfolios. And I've asked them, as a hiring manager, what are your thoughts about students submitting online portfolios? And so I just wanted to show you a couple of quotes that I've received and picked up over the years. And so this first one is from a human resource manager at RTP Company, which is based in Winona here, Janelle Grobeck. She says, quote, "Without an interview, it's hard to gauge a student's readiness or skills in their brief resume. So this provides a nice amount of information and examples that tell a much more robust amount of information and examples that a student can aid them in the application process." So that was from Janelle Grobeck. Another hiring manager, Morgan Short, said, "As a hiring manager for creative professionals, I would say I place even more importance on the candidate's portfolio than I do their resume or cover letter. In fact, sometimes I even skip the cover letter altogether and look straight at their portfolio." I told you earlier about how the hiring committee I'm on, somebody had a portfolio that they submitted, and I did the same thing that Morgan just talked about there. I saw the portfolio link on their resume, didn't even read the cover letter. I went straight to the portfolio because I knew that would tell me very quickly whether or not this was somebody I wanted to spend more time on. So I think it can play a very large role in the hiring process as long as you have a really good, strong portfolio. So it definitely impresses hiring managers. So that's another, I think, important purpose for a portfolio. 86% of surveyed companies say that they will visit an applicant's electronic portfolio. So that's a really high percentage. Sometimes you're lucky to get 86% to even look at your resume. So that's a high percentage. Also, 71% of recruiters state that the quality of a portfolio influences their hiring decisions. But that also could mean they won't hire you because of your portfolio. You've got to make sure that it's ready to present and it's the strongest work that you have available to share, especially if that's the purpose as to why you built your portfolio. And then the average time spent with a portfolio is 3 minutes versus 90 seconds on a resume. So I think because of the visual nature of it, the interactive nature of it, hiring managers will spend time on a portfolio, whereas they may just give a very quick glance to your resume. And so here's the source for those statistics here at the bottom. Wanted to show you one other another portfolio here, and that's Peyton Bierman, who just graduated this past May from St. Mary's. So I'll show you hers, and I wanted to showcase hers just because hers is a little bit more on the simpler side of things, which is great too. It doesn't have to showcase everything and anything. Peyton was a marketing major here at St. Mary's, and this just has 3 menu items. It's got the home page, where she's got a little bit of a welcome section here and talks a little bit more about her. And then she has something for her work, and then a tab for her experience. So you can see that she showcases things a little bit differently, more simply than some of the other ones, and that's perfectly fine. I always say that a portfolio to some degree should kind of match your personality a little bit and what you hope to get out of it. And so here, but even with the more simplistic submissions that she has here, you can see there's still an explanation. There's still a context for the work that the hiring manager would be looking at here. Okay. And then she has a lot of her social media channels and some of the favorite pieces of work that she did while she was in college here. Okay. Another thing I wanted to point out is I usually encourage students not to put their telephone numbers on their portfolios. Now, it usually is linked in their resume, and usually I tell students you want to make sure you have a linkable resume on your site. So there's ways to find it. But usually, especially with Wix, might depend what platform you use, but with Wix, they just have a contact section that when it gets filled out, it automatically goes to the email that you put in for it to go to. So that's kind of a nice way rather than just putting all of your contact information out there on the web. I had talked about that downloadable resume. So here she has her resume more in visual online form, but then also you can click here to download her actual resume. So, and that's nice. I encourage students to do that. If you're the hiring manager and you like what you see from the portfolio, and maybe you want to share it with the CEO or somebody else at the company, then they have instantaneous access to your resume as well. So I always encourage students to put a downloadable resume, even if they do it in a more visual nature like Peyton did here on her site. All right, any questions so far? We're at kind of a bit of a midway point here. Any questions, Riley, in the chat?
I don't see any right
Okay.
now.
All right, we'll keep going. So the next thing that I wanted to share here and discuss is, how do students feel
Let me
about?
pause
Oh,
for a
go ahead,
second.
Michael.
So we're referring to chat, but there's actually a Q&A box. So
Oh,
we
okay, sorry. Yeah, Q&A box. So thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Riley, do you see the Q&A box there?
Yeah,
There's a
Nicole, she has, as the chat is disabled, I'd like to ask here, how do you suggest that we showcase our projects when, for example, the majority are workplace projects based on confidential data?
Yeah, so obviously that gets a lot trickier. And so usually anytime you're dealing with confidential data, what you want to do there is you want to talk about, as much as you can talk about the project, your role in the project, what you learned from it and what you were able to contribute to it. But obviously, if it's a confidential workplace thing, you won't be able to show anything without your employer's consent. And even if you are showing something, that work that you did for an employer, I always tell students, get their consent. So if a student did something from an internship, for example, I always say, get the employer's consent before you put it up there and showcase it, and always fairly and accurately describe your role in the project, because maybe it was group work, maybe somebody else at the company contributed some of the graphics or some of the writing. So always be very forthright in saying what your role in the project was, and then get permission to show what you can. When it's confidential, there's really no way you can show that necessarily, other than talking about as much about the project as you can and then saying what your role in it was. Okay, anything else, Riley?
No other questions
Okay.
currently.
Just want to quickly go through what students are saying, and then I'm going to get into kind of the best practices for a portfolio. And then towards the end, we'll get into talking about data analytics, data science portfolios. So Grace Gillis here, a recent graduate of St. Mary, she wanted to go into television news and sports. And so obviously somebody that wants to do that, you need clips, right? They want to see that type of thing. And she was also applying to graduate schools. So what she said is, she said, creating a virtual portfolio also allowed me to reflect on the work I have put in throughout my education and see for myself that my experiences have truly prepared me to enter the job market. Sometimes students have that imposter syndrome. They don't necessarily have the confidence to enter the workforce and the job market. When they put together their portfolio, they can reflect and say, wow, I really have done a lot of work over my 4 years here, or my 2 years of graduate school, or whatever it is. And it's really good work, and I should be showcasing this. So I think an online portfolio, when it's done well, can help build that confidence in a student that they can and are capable of doing some of these jobs. Two other quotes I have. Celeste Russell, a recent graduate, said, in a world where every LinkedIn profile looks the same, it's nice to create something that I can put my personal stamp on. So it goes back to what we talked about very early in this session, and that is standing out from the field, differentiating yourself from everybody else who's out there. And then finally, Morgan Prokosh, who graduated a couple of years ago, said, it caused me to really think about and clarify my personal brand and the professional story that I want to portray, as well as to look back at everything that I have done. So that's kind of a nice similarity there to what both Grace and Celeste were quoted as well. So by and large, students have a really good experience putting these together and tend to do a lot of good things with them. So if you're thinking about putting your portfolio together, what are some best practices? Well, first of all, you have to decide on a platform. Again, most of our students use Wix. The nice thing with Wix is that if you aren't accustomed to building your own website, there are a lot of online tutorials that can kind of walk you through that process. If you are good at coding and creating your own websites, you can certainly do that and create your own online portfolio that way. But as far as best practices go, one thing I tell students is you have to know the types of jobs you're going to be applying for, how those jobs match your skill set and what you can bring to the company, and make sure then that what's in your portfolio matches what you hope to go into and what employers are looking for. So you want to make sure the content that you're showcasing is relevant to your audience and to what you hope to do professionally. Sometimes students will just take any old project that they have access to and put it in their portfolio, and it isn't necessarily relevant to the career that they're going to go into. So I always say, think about your audience. What would a hiring manager in your profession want to see? As we talked about earlier, if you're going to have a photo on your website, make sure that it's a professional headshot or a high quality photo of some kind. So nothing blurry, nothing awkwardly cropped. Trust me, and I've been doing this since about 2004. I've seen it all. And I often have to talk to students about the quality of the photos and the quality of their headshots that they're putting online. You want to make sure that you're providing context and overviews for the work that you're including in your portfolio. We had talked about that earlier, and I showed you an example there, but never just put something in there with no explanation whatsoever. Again, if this is somebody's first time meeting you, they're not going to know why you're putting it in there or what it is. So always provide context and overviews for everything that you have in there. Make sure that you label both your menu items at the top and your documents appropriately. Make sure the documents you are putting in there match the menu heading so that there isn't any confusion or bewilderment on the part of the hiring manager as to what they're looking at or why it's included in that particular section. Since it is a first impression of you, edit, edit, edit. Always double, triple check your writing, the work that you're putting in there. Make sure there aren't any broken links because everything in there is a reflection on you and your professionalism. So you want to make sure that you take a look at it. And I would encourage you, when you have it done and before you publish it, have someone else take a look at it. Get another perspective or two or three to make sure that they're seeing what you're seeing and that there aren't any errors that you're sort of missing on your own. I do encourage students to have a variety of work that they're displaying, but I always emphasize quality over quantity. You want to showcase the best work that you've done because, again, we know a hiring manager isn't going to look at everything. So sometimes it's better to provide less rather than more. Make sure that there's good depth to it rather than breadth necessarily. And so it kind of depends on your goals and who you're going to be sending this to, but you want to make sure you've got quality over quantity. That's definitely more important. As I said earlier, a portfolio is dynamic. It's not static. You want to update it regularly. You should be updating it anytime you have something new you want to showcase. I always tell our graduating seniors that this is kind of an ongoing homework assignment, right? This is something that you should be updating throughout your career. One of the best ones at doing that was one I showed you earlier, Caroline Bosco. She has been keeping her portfolio updated throughout, and that's why that was one of the first ones that I showed you because she's been exceptionally good at making sure that she's always ready for that next job opportunity and ready to send that out. Add your social networks in there. We know hiring managers are going to search those out. So if you have, LinkedIn, that for sure you want to put on there. And then if you have professionally presentable X or Facebook or other types of accounts, you certainly can put those on there. You don't have to, but just know that a hiring manager will likely seek those out anyway. Another thing you can do, I tell students, is explain as part of the context that you provide. You can explain what you learned from doing a project, good or bad, if you had to redo any parts of it. So it's okay to showcase growth, to showcase learning. That's all part of any student's life. All of us are growing and learning every day. So it's fine to put that within the context of the work that you're displaying. And then the other thing, again, link to as much as you can. Link to your resume, link to a cover letter, link to your social media profiles. If you're talking about you're a graduate of St. Mary's University, link to the university website in case somebody isn't familiar with that. Use the online platform and make it as dynamic and interactive as possible. One last portfolio I want to show you before we get into data science and data analytics portfolios is this one from Grace Chalmers. So I'll do a new share here with Grace. Because there is something unique about hers that I wanted to show you. That if you have a special skill set, you want to showcase that as much as possible. So as we look at Grace's here, you'll see it's similar to the other portfolios that I showed you. If you click on work samples, she's got stuff for sports writing, feature stories, public relations, but also Spanish samples. One of the things Grace wanted to do with her portfolio is showcase her ability to both speak and write in Spanish, because she thought that is one area that can help me stand out even more from the field besides just having a portfolio. So if you notice in the upper right-hand corner here, she has a click here section that will take you to the exact same portfolio, only everything's in Spanish. And so that's a unique skill that Grace had that she wanted to showcase. So she used her portfolio, I think, in a very creative, unique way that does that. So now all of the headings are in Spanish and everything is written in Spanish. And then all of the works that she displays are in Spanish as well. Okay, and then to go back, we just go for English, click here, and then it takes us back to the English site. So that, I think, is a really nice way to showcase special skills. So that's something else you can do. We saw Morgan do that a little bit as well with the photography section of her portfolio. Okay. So next, I want to talk about data science portfolios. Obviously, that's more your area. That's why you're here. And so do data science portfolios differ from some of the portfolios that I was showing you? And the answer to that is yes and no. Obviously, in your data science portfolios, you're going to have more technical jargon. You're going to have data displays, and that's perfectly fine because that's the audience that you're going to be speaking to. Those hiring managers that you're presenting this to, they're going to understand that language, right? And so and I always say no two portfolios should ever be the same. So obviously I'm showing you portfolios my students have done in communications. Theirs is going to be a little bit more visually oriented world that they're going to. Yours is going to be more data-based. And so you are going to have very different looking projects and very different looking portfolios, and that's perfectly acceptable. The way they still are the same, though, is that they still need to be inviting. They still need to be aesthetically pleasing. They still need to give proper context for the work that you're showing. So a lot of those things still stay the same, even though the work you're showing is obviously very different. So DataCamp's Adele Nemi has a really good blog post. So I'm going to click on that now. And I'll do a new share just to show you what this blog post looks like, because in this particular blog post, He talks about how to build a great data science portfolio and provides examples for it. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I know we're running out of time here, and I do want to provide a minute or two for Q&A, but he talks about why it's important to invest in a data science portfolio. Okay, and those are a lot of the same reasons that we've already talked about. He talks about the different types of portfolio projects, from code-based projects to content-based projects, and then 7 ways to craft an outstanding data portfolio. And so as we scroll through this here, after we get through the 7th one, he gives examples of great data science portfolios. And I've been through some of these, and he really does give a very good variety of different types of portfolios that you might find in the data analytics and data science world. So if you get a chance, I would encourage you to visit this website and this blog post, because he's got a lot of really good information. I've spent some time with it, and he has a lot of great tips, suggestions, and samples that he shows there. All right, and then Michael, do we have time? Do you want me to show how to add a file, Excel file, to a Wix document, or should we wrap it up here?
I think we
It'll
should
only
wrap
take
it
a
up.
few minutes, but I want to
Yeah.
honor people's time here if they were expecting to be done by about 1. So
Yeah, I think so, the lunch hour, but just explain that it is possible to do this. I
yes,
think,
it's
because I
super
didn't
easy
even
to
know it
do.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very easy, especially within Wix. That's how I was going to show you, but I've kind of got the instructions outlined here. All you have to do is, once you have your Wix website built, you go into the editor page, and then you can add elements and documents to it. And so that way, you're not necessarily showing the document on the page like some of my students did, but you're linking to it, and then it would open up within Excel itself. But again, related to a question we had earlier, you want to make sure that it's your data set that you're giving permission people to take a look at, and not company information or confidential information. That's going to be very important for you to distinguish and try to identify. So. Michael, will folks have access to this PowerPoint afterwards? Because all of those portfolios are linked within the PowerPoint. And obviously some of the instructions on there for adding Excel documents to Wix are included there as well. So
Yes, after the event, Riley will send out a message recapping and sharing out where we can access these materials.
excellent, excellent. And I really would encourage you to visit that blog post on data science portfolios, because that really will be relevant to when you start to work on yours, and it'll give you some good ideas for how you can do yours. So I'd open it up to any last questions here.
And again, use that Q&A button. We've been using the wrong choice of words when we've been saying use the chat. So
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually do have a question for you. I don't see one in the box, but do you have an idea of where one could look for an example of a portfolio that would be related to a data position?
Yeah, I would steer you back to that blog from Adele Nemi that's on the second last slide there. He has a ton of different ones in there, some that are more code-based, others that are more Excel worksheet-based. So there's a lot that he has in there. Obviously, since I don't teach in that area, none of my students really have those types of projects to display. But that particular blog post was really effective in showcasing what I thought were some excellent examples of that, and a really wide variety. Just about any type of data project you can think of, he's got some sort of example of that in there. So that was on the second last slide.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, really appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you. I hope you had some good takeaways from this. And